Welcome to r/malicious compliance, where people conform to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. Hit the like and subscribe, and let's begin. We have 3 great stories for you today. The first story. On flexible break time? If you insist. I posted recently about my hot pink duct tape shoe saga, and I thought of another much dirtier and less fabulous debacle that I should share here. This particular issue predates my election as union president, but most of the supervisors remain the same. To recap, many years ago, I worked for a very large company with a fairly powerful union. I was serving as a griever, read complaint department, for the union at the time, though that's not a huge part of this tale. I was at that point working in a part of the campus that was exceptionally dirty at all times. Part of my daily task was to walk around looking for giant piles of carbon dust dumped by machinery, and to shovel it into barrels and dispose of it. These piles of carbon were safety concerns because carbon dust is highly flammable, and obviously the goal was to minimize the amount of loose carbon dust floating around. So I needed to remove it as soon as I was aware of its presence. Not an easy job, but I was super into fitness at the time, and I kind of enjoyed the physical part of the job. Now, when I was on shoveling patrol, I'd be in full head to toe PPE. So, Tvec, gloves, respirator, safety glasses, a pain in the butt to put on and take off. In general, once I started a job, I prefer to finish it rather than removing my PPE for 15 minutes, just to get fully suited back up and go back. So, this fateful day, I was cleaning up a particularly obnoxious and large pile of carbon. My watch buzzed, alerting me that it was break time, but I figured I had 15 to 20 minutes left of work, and it would be a huge waste to strip down just to suit back up in new gear for another 15 to 20 minutes. Naturally, I opted to finish the task. About 30 minutes later, I was done, out of my safety gear and washed up to sit down for a 15-minute break in an air-conditioned break room. Absolute bliss. Then, as luck would have it, no more than 2 minutes later, as I'm minding my own business eating string cheese, one of the supervisors walked in and asked why the hell I was in the break room off of break time. I told her about the carbon spill and how it didn't make sense to leave the job unfinished and waste equipment when I could just finish the job in one go. We also generally prioritize cleaning up potential safety hazards in a timely manner. I was informed that I was being written up for not taking my break at the correct time, and that I was forfeiting that break by missing it. I told the supervisor she couldn't legally take my break time due to her deciding to change the policy, so she graciously allowed me to finish my remaining 10 minutes. Couldn't really fight the write-up because technically we did have a set break time, and the practice of moving break times was unique to the particular building I was working in due to the emergency safety hazards requiring attention. This building was close to a century old. Sometimes there were floods, carbon dumps, oil spills, etc. The catastrophic issues like that were on our domain, and was informal, so we never had a written agreement allowing us to move breaks as needed for urgent jobs. So, shortly after, the 5 to 6 of us working in the building were all called together and informed that under no circumstances could we take our breaks outside of set times. In case of emergency, we required verbal permission from a supervisor to do so. Famous last words. As you can probably predict, a few weeks later all 5 employees from my department present were called for an emergency removal of a combined oil and carbon spill. This is a very heavy, very dirty, and fairly dangerous work. The entire factory had to stop production until we got this cleaned up. The plant manager was actually shoveling alongside of us to try to move everything along faster. 30 minutes later, I realize it's less than 15 minutes before we have to go to lunch. I mention this to my coworkers, to which we all grumble. I explain to the plant manager that we have been told that we cannot work over our lunch break without permission, or risk write-ups. So I was going to make a call to get permission. I called every supervisor we had in those 15 minutes. Not a single one answered. Apparently, they had all gone to lunch together and didn't want to be bothered. I came back in and told the crew I couldn't reach anyone. They all tried calling as well, and nothing. The plant manager called our supervisors. They didn't even pick up for him. So, we apologized to the plant manager, and we went on lunch, leaving the plant down for an additional 30 minutes. The time we'd come back from lunch, we'd still been unable to reach any member of supervision. Finished the job, cleaned up, and went back to our usual task as the production started back up. Apparently, the plant manager did eventually get a hold of the supervision team because they showed up furious at us for going on our lunch, up until I reminded them that they'd already written me up for moving a break without consent previously. Apparently, The plant manager and head of manufacturing absolutely tore into them for not answering any calls for over 60 minutes and causing production to halt. They quickly decided that they would no longer be enforcing that rule and gave us discretion on when and how is best to take our breaks after that. Not quite as fabulous as hot pink duct tape, but it was pretty damn enjoyable. The second story. You want that laminated? At the time, I worked in a copy center of a popular office supply store. One evening, a 30-something man came in with his Super Bowl tickets and wanted them laminated to preserve them. It's important to note that lamination does not preserve items long term. It yellows and cannot be removed from the item, makes it difficult to determine if the item is fake, and eventually falls apart and peels. Secondly, and more importantly, lamination uses heat, so it turns heat printed items like Super Bowl tickets solid black, which eventually fades completely. It would ruin the tickets in 20 seconds. So I told him this, and he refused. He insisted. I refused, which was 100% allowed when it came to a lamination machine, as it destroys the customer's original media. He called me some names, so I continued to refuse. He called for a manager. The manager had exactly zero patience for any of the shenanigans at all. He told the customer no. The customer carried on the tantrum. I typed up a basic release form, as I knew what was coming. It stated that lamination would destroy the tickets, had everything about the tickets, and was relatively ironclad coming from someone who makes minimum wage. The manager finally said, fine, we would laminate them. I handed him the release, and he insisted that the customer sign it. He told me to laminate the tickets, and I refused again, knowing that I could still be disciplined for ruining the originals. I always had the backing of management to refuse to ruin things. So the manager laminated the tickets. The tickets turned black. The customer lost his mind. The manager retreated to the locked office. The cops showed up and hauled off the customer. Corporate was not involved somehow, probably because of the cops. The customer claimed the tickets were worth over $1,000 each, but not anymore. Not offer cold lamination, as we were not allowed to laminate things that were valuable and couldn't be replaced anyway. We sold it, but the customer refused as he wasn't willing to risk screwing it up himself either. I hope you enjoyed these stories. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to know when the new videos come out.